Spider-Man 2 was the best superhero game that I've ever played in a long while, since the time that Arkham City came out years ago. The reason being is because it's been so long since a comic book game captured the vulnerability, connection, and relationships of characters in a capacity such as this. Sure, the first Spider-Man game, even the Miles Morales spin-off, captured that same feel, but this did so in a different way. As you can remember in the first entry, it was a lot more emotional, with all the odds stacked against Peter with his by far most powerful enemy to date. A person that knew everything about him, his father figure, Dr. Octavius. With that game, he lost that said father figure, as well as his Aunt May. Peter has lost almost everything in that game, and I believe that the theme of that game was overcoming your greatest obstacles. In the sequel, that theme is still here, but it isn't the main one. It was stated within the promotion material, be greater together. This game teaches Peter, Miles, and the player that no one can take on too much at once. Something has to give, and it's never a bad thing to ask for help. As a matter of fact, one of the first scenes within the game that says just this. And to make it better, it was a flashback to Aunt May and Peter when he was just a kid in high school. Peter ended up putting a hole in his bedroom wall after listening to J. Jonah Jameson talk complete nonsense about Spider-Man's escapades. As usual, you can listen to them while web swinging, but this was when it got to Peter. He was also trying to keep on top of his grades, be Spider-Man and such. It was too much for him at the time. May walks in, witnesses the hole in the wall, and explains to Peter that you can't take too much on at once. That's completely okay to let go of something to be able to do the other things. Not only was this a bonding moment between them and to hit the player in the feels, but it was also a subtle foreshadowing of what's to come. As you continue playing through the game, you then meet Harry for the first time. After some flashbacks, he asks Peter if he can join him in healing the world, again disregarding May's lesson. This comes to a boiling point when the symbiote comes into play. This pronounces Peter's feelings drastically. During gameplay and cutscenes, he'll say things like, "Everyone asks me to do things. It always has to be up to me, and I'll just do it myself." Again, an internal struggle with balance and the feeling of taking too much on at once, and if there are people that are there to help them. Going off topic for just a second, throughout this game, especially when Peter's under the control of the symbiote, he loses the sense of what it means to be Spider-Man. Spider-Man and Peter as a character is someone that does too much. He struggles to pay rent, struggles to keep a stable relationship, is always late to his job and school, can't make time for friends and family, all because of his escapades as Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a responsibility. No matter what, you will always do the right thing, no matter the outcome. Now, why do I bring this up unexpectedly? At the beginning, when I said Peter's taking too much on, it's being hinted at throughout the game that Peter's heading towards taking a break from Spider-Man. Hence the scene where he said he was taking too much on at once. And throughout the game, he has been building trust with Miles, letting him take the lead sometimes. There's this build-up through the entire game that Peter thinks he always has to do things himself. But towards the end, after the trust has been built between the two Spider-Men, Peter lets Miles know that he wants to take a break. He wants to enjoy life and enjoy his time with MJ. And when Miles hears this, he lets Peter know that things will be okay, to have trust in him. Spider-Man is a great game because a full character arc I never thought would happen happened. A surprise, if you will. A person so unwilling to let go of his Spider-Man duties eventually hands the keys to Miles. Peter lets go. He made room. He finally understood what May was trying to tell him. It was great because it wasn't something as bleak as Arkham Knight when you never knew what happened to Bruce. It isn't as black and white as Infamous Second Son. It ends on a complete arc. It ends in a realistic tone. Peter can't be Spider-Man forever, and it's heartwarming to see the trust he has in Miles. The game ended in a smile, which is exactly what this game needed to do. The villains were also a highlight of this game. Let me just name all of them just to get it out there. The two big baddies were of course Kraven the Hunter and Venom, with side villains being Martin Lee, Sandman, Scream, which was a small cameo that was really awesome. There was Lizard and also a small cameo from Scorpion, and it was a very small portion for that guy in the game. The biggest surprise to me though was the story intertwining with the two villains. In the last game, the one thing I was disappointed with, for one, was there was too many villains, but also they never really connected story-wise other than Otto letting them all out of prison and making a team. The Sinister Six kind of. In the sequel, they dialed the villains back and had their stories lead from one to the other. Kraven is an admittedly simple character that wants to find his rival and die a warrior's death. He also has bloodlust. He wants death to be worthy of him. He chases this because he's going to die anyway because of a sickness. You see how that connects with Harry? There are opposites which I like. Kraven doesn't fear death, though his motives for chasing it are questionable. Harry fears death and losing his friends, family, and dreams. He clings to the symbiote because of this, and I love it. It's sort of a weird juxtaposition between the two villains. There's one detail I love about Kraven and his ambitions within the game. He only goes against Venom and the other villains. This is because they are the only ones that are capable of killing. I realized this towards the end of the game, and it's why he never directly goes after Spider-Man. He only goes after Peter because he has the symbiote, and he only goes after Miles so he can battle Martin Lee to the death and bait symbiote Peter to come and save him, therefore being able to fight Venom. I thought this was a nice twist on things and a clever way of telling a story. Kraven is a villain, yes, but he isn't a direct villain, if you know what I mean. But this doesn't take away from his overall presence within the story. At every twist and turn, I always was on the edge of my seat when it came to this character. I thought I was going to fight him at any moment. I believe you only fight him like once in the game as Spider-Man. This never made me disappointed at all though. Mostly because I knew the story the developers were trying to tell, but also because you fight him as another character, which makes a lot more sense canonically within the game. You fight Kraven as Venom in his true form, with Harry being the host. Just the fact that the devs let us play as this villain is just insane to begin with, and was an awesome twist on things. This character had his own movement system, his own abilities, even his own finishers. Surprises like these add so much to games, just like in God of War when you can play as Atreus, or in Jedi Survivor when you eventually play as Seer. Even though that game didn't do it too well, but like I said, it adds a surprise factor that's welcomed. Moving on to Venom as a character, it was a slow burn, and I think it was a good decision to have it that way. If we just had Venom's character sped up in the story, it would have ruined the pacing that was laid out. Going from a harmless goo that helped Harry, to being attached to Peter and feeding off of him slowly, to getting back on Harry with their personality becoming more and more aggressive. Scary even. There was even some missions where they do incorporate that horror element, specifically when you play the MJ sections. I will get to those later. Tight corridors, dark hallways, and the typical horror feel, it's all there. Not to mention, they stay true to the character. Venom has always been a hive mind consciousness. He always addresses himself as we. They even incorporate the famous line, "We are Venom." And you know damn well my 5-year-old comic book adult loving ass jumped out of my seat and cheered with goosebumps all over my body. I need to stress this again. This is a comic book ass video game. Most of the things you loved growing up reading comics are here, but there's some things that I don't like regarding this character and the storyline that comes along with him. At the very end of the game, Venom creates multiple locations where there's Venom nests, a sort of extracurricular activity you can accomplish. I don't like these really at all. It feels out of place. Filler, I guess. There was no need to create this side activity. It felt like a cheap thing to mimic the activities you could do towards the end of the first Spider-Man, taking out stable bases and things like that. Not to mention at the end, I guess Venom symbiote shit is like everywhere, turning the whole city into Venom enemies. I understand that this may have been in the comics or cartoons, but again, it feels like the same shit from the last game where Devil's Breath was taking over the city with criminals running rampant. It feels like a carbon copy, but with symbiote victims. Let me know in the comments if you agree with me, but regardless, I do believe this was the best version of Venom we have had in a video game. Some may disagree with me, but I think the dark undertone this game has fits the character so well. Now, there is one other side villain that should get talked about more in this game when it comes to his character arc, and it's none other than Martin Lee. I just love the direction they took with this character. A redemption. In the last game, he was a broken character, not a plain evil one. His evil deeds came from the fact that Norman Osborn took his family away from him. They used juxtaposition well here by using Miles as a comparison. Through Lee's actions, he caused the same exact thing that Norman did to Lee. That was Lee taking Miles' dad away from him, and at some point in the game, when the two are fighting in which Martin Lee makes his way into Miles' mind, Lee understands what he'd done. He even is surprised during the scene. Through his actions, he has become someone he swore to destroy. Through that is when we see the character change, especially even after everything. At the end of the battle, Miles chooses to save him. It flipped a switch in Martin Lee's mind to right his wrongs. And at the end, in order to save Peter from the symbiote that's within him, he sacrifices his power to give Peter the anti-Venom suit, which helps take down Venom. Just a full 180 that makes total sense for the character. Martin Lee is a good character. He was just stuck in the shadow of revenge. Miles would have ended up the exact same, but he understood the path that would take him down. I don't know, I just love the connection between the characters. They're very similar. Overall, I honestly thought the villains were a highlight of this game, way better than the first game. Everything made more sense, everything flowed together well, there weren't too many villains, and the connections between villain and hero were well handled, well done. One of the most important things to nail in a Spider-Man game is of course New York City. They did this so well in the first game, but the question is, how do they expand on it in the sequel? Well, in the promotional material, they kept hammering home the fact that Queens and Brooklyn were the new areas to explore. Did it add anything new to the game? Here's when the criticism kind of comes into play within this video. These new areas honestly didn't add much to the overall game. There's some extra side content here, but it wasn't anything noticeably different. There is a but there. In my opinion, this criticism doesn't matter much because I loved it either way. It just made things bigger, which means more places to web swing and web glide, and honestly felt like Queens and Brooklyn should have been there to begin with before this game. What goes hand in hand with this though, and what I think was awesome, was the web swing things. I've watched countless YouTube videos of creators talking about how the web glider felt like a crutch, like it was the only thing they used and not web swinging at all. They didn't say it exactly like that, just along those lines. I very much disagree with this. I honestly feel like the reason they put this out there was because they were hurrying to their next mission, or they were trying to breeze past the story. People who enjoy Traversal will do what they can to look as graceful and badass as possible instead of making it to their destination as quickly as possible. I think that is where people got mixed up. As Spider-Man, you're supposed to look swaggy when you swing. That was the whole point of these additions. I mean, yes, the wings make you go faster, but I personally feel the addition was more for cool factor, but that's just me though. Overall, I think the game was amazing and is better than the last. The characters were more developed, the arcs in which the characters go through are better, the villains are better, literally everything is better. But to reiterate what I said before, this game really makes you think about things. It makes you learn about not necessarily forgiveness, but to let things go, to do what is better for those around you, to teach you that no matter how alone you feel, you will always have someone by your back, greater together. Even when Peter went through his dark time within the symbiote suit, he had MJ and Miles to bring him back into reality. When MJ turned into Scream, Peter did what he could to let MJ know that she wasn't alone, that he would do whatever he could for her. Miles, with the loss of his father, wasn't alone and had Martin Lee, of all people, to thank in order to save Peter. I also think this game did all it could to tell people that Miles isn't Spider-Man Jr. He's Spider-Man. Hence why he saves Peter countless times throughout the game, and why Peter handed him the keys to the city at the end of the game. Once you look for the hidden meanings within the game, that is when you realize that this was a masterpiece of a sequel, and I couldn't have asked for something better. This could be recency bias talking at this point, but I don't care. I love Spider-Man 2, and this game will be something I'll remember for a long, long time. And just to touch briefly on the MJ missions, because I said I'd talk about them, they're still kind of annoying here and there, but there's a big but here. You feel like John Wick when you're like MJ. You have this shotgun that you can just shoot Venom symbiote with, or like the Craven's goons. It's like MJ Wick, bro. Like it's decent. That's all I'm gonna say. It's not a hindrance. It's not a good thing. It's just, you just feel like John Wick. But anyways, thank you everyone for watching this sort of video of me gushing about the game. If you feel the same way, leave a comment down below and tell me about your favorite moment in the game. I'll be doing a full critique of this. It will either release before or after Cyberpunk 2077, whichever I get done with first. It really just depends. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.